By my watch, I see that it's 1:30. So to welcome Krystal and Jennifer for taking the time today to talk us through Concierge Auctions. We really appreciate you taking the time to do that just for us. So with that, Krystal, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ruth. Can everybody hear and see me okay? Great. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for having us. Jennifer, my colleague, is also on today. She is your Vice President of Business Development for your area. So thought it'd be great to have Jennifer join as well. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to meet you.
Hello, Jennifer. Thank you for working with us today.
Of course, looking forward to it.
So we're just going to take everyone through what we call our agent education webinar. And I'll just add, by virtue of everybody being on this today, I'll send out a link and follow up. And you also then can receive Silver Preferred Agent membership with us. So basically, anytime we have a client who may have an unlisted property and they are interested in auctioning, we like to refer them to check out our Silver Preferred Agents on our website, because by virtue of taking this training or this webinar, you will have become knowledgeable about the auction process. So I'll just put that little nugget in there before we get started. I'm Krystal Aeby, president of Concierge Auctions. Concierge Auctions, we've been in business going on about 2 decades, 20 years, and I've had the pleasure of joining the firm about 19 years ago. So have been able to grow with the business, see the business from start to finish, and be part of that. So hopefully between the two of us, we can answer any questions you may have. And if you have any other ones, we'll be sure to get you to the right folks who can. So basically just going through, again, the company, been in the business, founded 19, 20 years ago. Just as you think about the world's most expensive art, antiquities, automobiles has become a really exciting new category in the world of auction as well. So too is luxury real estate. We actually were born out of the traditional real estate and brokerage community in Florida from a broker and an agent who had many high valued listings back in 2008, and just were seeing those listings not turn as quickly as they would like, and started auctioning real estate. We only work in the luxury sector, but just to give you a little bit of background about where we're from and who we are. And we also have never auctioned a property in our close to 20 years without a real estate agent involved. So very much working in partnership with all of you guys, with other agents, and I'll just also add across all brands. Some, when they think of auctions, particularly I think for real estate, it's a relatively new category for luxury still, can think of more distressed, or I'll say the F word, fire sale type properties. That's not what we do. We again only work in the luxury realm, and really for sellers who aren't in a financial distress or situation, but they're looking at auction because they first and foremost value time. And that's also the same reason a lot of agents like you guys and your agents would come to us to look at. Seller really is looking at liquidating an asset within a very finite period of time. And by virtue of the auction, they're able to set a deadline for what that sale would be. So not in the business of bank distress or foreclosures. And when you think about auction, also, I'll just mention, we are also now part of the Anywhere umbrella, as you are as well. About 3 years ago, we were majority acquired, half by Sotheby's Auction House and half by Anywhere. So one of their portfolio of companies, just like Coldwell Banker, we continue to partner with agents of all brands. So we're not exclusive to one brand over another. And you'll also see throughout all of our marketing, we co-market with the brand as well. So really, if you think about Concierge Auctions, an additional tool for you guys for agents to compete, win, and ultimately sell very one-of-a-kind, high-valued, unique assets. Just a quick overview before we get started. Our average sale price is $5 million. Now, certainly depending on the market, that could range anywhere from 2.5. We've sold upwards of 150 million plus, and we've been active in nearly every US state, 35 countries, and our entire process is 60 days from the day the auction marketing agreement is signed to the day the closing happens. So a very accelerated time period, especially as you guys know, where some luxury listings can have multiple agents, they can have multiple years. on the market to find the right buyer. Just a little bit of this course overview today, and we can go through auction basics, which we've kind of talked a little bit about, what the benefits are to you and your client, what sort of properties are best suited for auction, and also we have a number of different ways to earn commission through auction, not just as the listing agent, what the timeline looks like, the marketing, and then going through the format and fees. I know there may be some questions of reserves and how that works in the different structure. And then last but not least, bidder qualification, making sure that we have the right buyers come to the table. So just jumping into auction 101, I guess you would say, you guys all know you're luxury agents in the business. It can be very difficult, especially for luxury properties, when you're talking about the timeline of sale. Mainly, again, properties can be listed for years, finding a very small buyer pool, but then also pairing it with the timing, right? The property being listed, you could have a buyer come in a year ago, and it could be a good 6 months before another one materializes. And really looking at auction to help multiple buyers arrive at once. And what we see, which you guys see too with luxury properties, either they sell quickly within the first 60 to 180 days, and it's a higher percent of list price, or sometimes they can linger on the market for years, whether that's market fluidity or the price just not quite matching what the value is of the market the buyers are seeing. But when we do see properties time and time again on the market for a while, there's a little bit of a stale factor that they often sell for a fraction of the original price. And you guys know, kind of go into this transparent world. This is actually a infographic that's stood the test of time with us. But if you really think about when a property is listed, the longer it sits on the market, there's really what we call this time period, this danger zone, a point of inflection, whereby it really starts affecting the price. So going back, if you look at auction, two main benefits, maximizing value and maximizing time, helping agents expand the buyer pool from the start, create that competition. I like to say auction spurs action. A lot of times you guys know there are buyers who are maybe waiting on the sidelines for the next price reduction. There's not really a set date that the property necessarily is trading for. So just by virtue of having the auction itself can help create that deadline and what that date is. The property is selling regardless. So if you're a buyer, you need to get off the sidelines and come to the table now or potentially never. So most importantly, also helping the seller sell on their timeline so they can liquidate that asset and move on in their lives. Two periods of listing that we really find are beneficial to agents the most would be right out of the gates, going straight to market with a listing and really driving price through multiple offers at once. The majority of the time, I will say, though, falls within this B category, which would be to help reignite activity. So you may not be the first agent to have the listing, so the property may have already been listed for a number of years, but really helping a property re-energize and get activity going again where maybe there hasn't been significant interest or that interest has started to stale. The benefits of auction, I've gone through this a little bit, but just to stress again, ultimately two of our core values. The first would be helping maximize price within 60 days by expanding the reach. And then the second would be protecting an agent commission on both sides of the transaction. So we'll talk about that in a minute. The auction is just an agreement that's an overlay, if you will, to the listing agreement. That remains intact. And in fact, we work directly with the listing agent as we market and sell the property. And then benefits, of course, I already just said this, but earning your commission, accelerated sell, especially if there are price reductions or if you're having a listing that's about to expire within 60 to 90 days beforehand. We really see a lot of agents benefiting from auction to help come in and seal the deal, also expanding the pipeline. And then we'll talk about commissions and referrals, but a lot of referral opportunities as well within your network. Well, we'll talk about it now. So going into the first way would be earning your full commission as a listing agent. Again, The commission's protected. We have sellers. We do sometimes have sellers come to us and want to go straight to auction with just us. We will not take the business unless it's listed by a local listing agent or listing agent. So first and foremost would be earning your full commission. The second way would be if you represent a winning bidder. So on the buyer side of the transaction, also earning the full commission. Or when a seller comes to us, I mentioned this earlier by virtue of the program, and they're not listed by an agent, referring the listing to one of you guys. If the seller chooses that, then that also is a way, obviously, you would receive the full commission based on that selling. And then also a buyer referral, a split commission. So on the flip side, if a potential buyer comes to us without an agent and we refer to our preferred agent, you would earn the buyer commission off of that transaction. And then the last way would be for referral. We love referrals in the market. Just because it's not your listing, we understand you have a wide network. We pay out agents a half a point when properties close on deals that they refer into us from other listing agents. And then this just gives a few examples of what that could look like for a $5 million sale. Of course, the full commission would be 150. This is also assuming that there's a 3% split on that to the 0.5 referral fee. So property suited for auction, I already talked about the price point of 2.5 upwards of 150 million plus. We do find it's not necessary, but it certainly is beneficial when a lot of our clients know about auction already. If they already have a piece of art they've sold through auction, whether it's through Sotheby's or another auction house, obviously premier, very one-of-a-kind properties. Often you're looking at properties where it's really a needle in the haystack buyer, or there aren't other comparables, or it's just so unique. We find that through auction, again, with creating that deadline also, there can be a sense of urgency and a little bit more elasticity on what buyers may be looking for. What I mean by that is if it's a property that, let's just say Aspen, it's not necessarily in the ski area, but it is nearby. A buyer with traditional real estate may be just very specifically looking at that ski area. But what we find with auction is it expands the pool a little bit more, where somebody really sees that opportunity and the data deadline, they might be a little bit, more open to the features they're looking for. The other would be, again, those 2 points in the market, never listed for sale or direct to auction. What I will say is that just profile perspective apart, we are getting about for every 20 inquiries we get, we are signing one piece of business to auction. So also very important that, we're looking at what the seller's mindset is, what the seller's ultimate goals are, the agent's familiarity with auction in the market, as well as the aesthetics of the property itself. Just going through timeline, I mentioned it's 60 days. So very, very quick. When we talk about the auction agreement being signed, or if you have a property, I guess, backing up that your seller's interested in auction, the first thing is pairing you with a business developer like Jennifer and helping go through what the expectations can be, the process. You'll have someone from our team working hand in hand with you. So even if you don't know all the answers to auction, there is somebody who is there to help you with that. So we'll analyze what I just mentioned of the vetting criteria of the property, the location, aesthetics, the broker partnership, the seller's disposition, and then moving towards a proposal, which outlines everything in the auction, some of this from start to finish, and then the auction agreement being executed again on top of the listing agreement. More specific into those 60 days and how they're broken up. Once the agreement is signed, the property goes into what we call underwriting, which is about a 2-week process of, again, what I just mentioned, going through a vetting. When the underwriting is approved, then we really start to collate with the listing agent all of the assets. That may mean new photo shoot, new video, putting together all of the auction materials are not a cost to the agent. Our team puts those together with the listing agent, completely co-branded for usage in the marketing. But this is about a 2-week time, and we want to make sure everything is done up the front because we launch what's called an auction launch day. Everyone stays mute about the property going to auction, and that's the day where we really go out to the market with everything. Press, signage, collateral, open houses start every single day. Any of the advertising, everything happens on that one set launch day. And then from there, you're looking at a 5-week exposure period of marketing. The first 3 weeks, we're really looking at our database. We have a database of nearly 1 million contacts, and that has proprietary to us. It's been built up over time. So huge advantage, as you know, of tapping into that database. Every auction we have a number of bidders who come to the table, a number of buyers. And so first and foremost, when we launch into the market is aggregating that activity and making sure all those members in our database know about the new opportunity. And then going into the market with new marketing, new advertising, open house and showings, and really hitting the pavement. After that 3-week period, we have what's called a pre-auction call. And this is where any bidders who have come forward, they place what's called a starting bid. It's basically where they're going to open their bidding at. And the seller and the listing agent review every bidder, what their dossier is, what their portfolio is, who they are, how they found out about the property, and ultimately then where the starting bids are, what the stack looks like at that point. This is before we even open the auction and the bidding to the public. At that point, the seller gets to decide whether they want to move forward and accept those bids. The highest of that forms the reserve for the property, meaning once the bidding opens, that is the lowest price in which the property could trade for. And then we move forward and open the bidding when the seller moves forward. If the seller likes to move forward, we open the bidding. All of those bids are then displayed online, and we go back out to the market to aggregate more bids within the next 2 weeks. Bidding closes, and then the closing happens anywhere between 1 to 4 weeks. Global reach, I mean, you guys, Coldwell Banker, do such a great job with marketing, so you're going to be very familiar with this. At the end of the day, we're really looking for our bidders to come. We like to say a third, a third, a third. A third coming brand new buyer prospects. So all of the marketing and the advertising that's done, overlaid. A third from local exposure. I think sometimes people are surprised, but I go back to that auction equals action. Just by setting the auction and the deadline of sale, you will see buyers who have maybe come to the table before, but they just haven't purchased the asset, or a neighbor or someone in the local market being aggregated. And then a third come directly out of our database from, again, our buyers who are always looking for the next auction opportunity. I will say in some markets, and we are seeing more often, 50% coming directly out of our database. And if you just took the funnel after all the marketing is done, we really like to aggregate, I like to say 1 million eyeballs looking at the property, which will then generate 200 to 400 people who raise their hand with initial interest, driving to 25 to 50 showings, 3 to 7 bidders for the one bidder. So really we're working together to aggregate what this pool looks like. We also have a very defined process. We have a client portal where at any given time, the listing agent, the seller can go in and see how we're tracking to these metrics and be able to adjust if we need to from day one. And then again, by virtue, Coldwell Banker, you're very familiar. If you look at the property, the listing, really touch the full gamut of marketing from A to Z, traditional to the latest digital. So anything from earned media, press, we're really big into press, and making sure we're getting all the key and global media outlets out there. Any of the paid media, anyone who comes, of course, to the property page, we retarget them with ads to come back, also reaching new eyeballs as well, making sure we're in all the property listing sites, MLS updates and notifications, any shared media, and then of course owned media as well, making sure that you guys are armed, that the market's armed with any print collateral or other digital assets. Getting into the format and fees, first off, we don't charge any seller fees. And again, we front all the marketing. That's why when we go through that vetting period, it's so important because we're essentially fronting what the cost is for the market of the business. No seller fees. We get paid with what's called a buyer premium, very standard across auction houses. Some can go upwards of 22%. We charge 12% buyer premium across the board. And for the starting bid incentive, we also offer this. This is something that's been proprietary to us as well. When I mentioned that time period where the seller reviews all the opening bids, we actually incentivize buyers to put forward what their hand is to show us their cards a little bit. And any buyer who puts forward their opening bid, and if they're ultimately the winning bidder, then we will reimburse them, or their buyer premium is reduced via a credit by 50%. So that also is a great incentive to have bidders put in their starting bids ahead of that phone call conversation for the listing agent, the seller, to really start to gather market value and see again what that highest reserve would be when we open the bidding. And then other than that, the taxes and titles the same as what it would be in traditional real estate. There are 3 ways that we qualify bidders. Bidders complete, first off, just the auction terms and conditions. Everything is outlined in that agreement. They provide a proof of funds from a bank or financial institution. We want to be sure that at the end of the day, when they are the last one to, whether it's tap or raise a gavel in a live auction, they're the ones that are purchasing the property. And then they also, at the close of bidding, sign a contract and then they produce a non-refundable deposit. It's typically $100,000, can go upwards of $250,000, depending on the value of the property. And then this case study short, you may know Jade Mills really well. We have a host of case studies with Coldwell Banker over the years, really well-known agents, all the right things to market. It's really about the auction helping set that deadline. And we've worked with Jane a number of transactions. This is just one example. In California and Bel Air, we sold for close to 21 million. There were almost 1,000 prospects. We had over 500 showings within that 5-week period of time. So really aggressive, a lot of eyeballs. Ultimately had 10 bidders. Remember, our goal is 3 to 7. So it was a really successful auction for the one winning bidder. One thing I'll mention too is our smartest listing agents also know, when we're generating prospects of nearly 1,000, that's 1,000 people who are looking in that same price point, in that same market at that same time. So we also see a number of listing agents who also then maintain relationships and sell traditional assets as well to a lot of these buyers who come forward on the heels of the auction, because again, of those 1,000 prospects, there was only one person who won that auction asset. I know I threw a lot at you, so I'm just going to stop and we can open it up for Q&A and yeah, see if anybody has questions that Jennifer and I can answer. Yes, Josh.
So on the processing, I just noticed that where does the inspection period fall in, or is there one? Because you said they signed the contract after the
They
bid.
do. Yeah, that's a great question. So the day we launch, all of the diligence we have available in a diligence room on our website, which would include the inspection. Now, buyers are welcome if they want to do their own inspection, but basically in that same 5-week period that we're marketing, buyers would do any of their questions, any of their inspections up front. So none of that diligence is on the back end once we go to closing. When somebody raises their paddle at the end of the auction, they're buying it as is, where is, no contingencies.
Can the seller say it's a $5 million house and they say, I'm not going to take less than 5 million? Can they set their rate, what they want?
Yeah, so it's a great question. That is the market reserve. So when we have found that the best way to get the highest value for the property is to, when we launch the property, we have just the list price, right? And we do also formulate what's called a starting bid range, where we think buyers could start their bids, market it widely, and at the end of that 3-week period, right, the highest starting bid forms the reserve. So in that example, if the seller's looking for 5 million, then the seller will have a choice 24 to 48 hours before their auction is supposed to open of seeing where actual real bids are in place and if they want to accept those. So if the seller doesn't, let's say there's 3 million, 4 million, 4.5 million at that point, the seller could choose, I really was looking for 5, I'm not going to move forward. But what I will say is once we open that 4.5 million, that's the lowest possible. We go back out to the market to aggregate higher. Those are just the bids where bidders start, not where bidders will end.
Okay.
I have a question, Crystal. Excuse me. If our agents want to participate in this, I thought I read somewhere about a training program that they have to go through first.
Mhm. Everyone here just went through it, the initial training
okay.
program.
We're doing
This is
it.
the silver preferred agent program. But we do have additional webinars and, courses as well. Yeah, but that's what this is here. The agents don't have to be a silver preferred agent. The silver preferred agent program is where, we like to direct if anybody comes and they're not listed and they want to list, let's say with a Coldwell Banker agent, we will say, great, we have a host of agents who have already taken the course on our website. And there are different levels too, Ruth. Like once you do a
Okay.
first transaction with us, if you represent the seller, then you're our highest part of that program. And if you represent a buyer, then you're a gold agent. So different levels based on the experience with auction.
Okay.
You don't have
So
to have a course to have a listing. Sign up.
So it is just the agents that participated today that have gone through. Okay. All right,
Yes.
fine.
Yes. Or
I
similar.
I have a list of them.
Great. Okay, perfect. That would be wonderful because I'm not going through our typical tooling for it. So I can make sure that those messages get out to everybody.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate that. So the minimum though is 2.5 million, right?
That varies. It varies on market. If we have multiple auctions or, for example, Texas would be anywhere from 2.5 million plus. New York, you're looking more at 20 million plus. So that's just a good average point. But if there are listings that are 1 million, 1.5 million, that's where Jennifer and her team would come in to help vet those.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Have
we
another-
could drill down
Yeah.
on information a little bit more and what the seller is looking for in terms of goals and, kind of an outcome they're looking to get. So it's kind of case by case.
Okay. Because Coldwell Banker has set our threshold for luxury properties at 1.8. But we have quite a few properties much higher in value on the market that we've listed, so.
Yep.
So I have a question about, this is Alina Davis. I have a question about a property here in the Keys at 80908 Overseas Highway that sold this past December. That property started out with Sotheby's as the listing agent in February of 2024 at $7,345,000. They reduced to a price of 5.5 in August. And I guess then in November, well, you probably started your work in maybe September or October. The price change went to 2,850,000. Then it went up in December to 2,950,000, and I guess that's where you saw the bids for that. How did you come upon a starting price of 2,850,000 when the reduced price had been 5.5?
So in the process, the 2,850,000 was probably was the highest starting bid that came in. So as Krystal referenced previously, that set the reserve and the seller was amenable to open the auction with that being the highest starting bid. So that was why you saw the MLS reduce to the highest starting bid, and then it moved incrementally as bids moved.
Okay, so then bids moved, so it went to 2,950,000 and then finally closed at the 3.56.
Correct.
Okay, so the seller would have been amenable to something much less than the 5.5,
Correct.
but we had to do it through an auction to get him, I guess, mentally there.
So I have a question. What happens if somebody wants that 5 million sales number and they don't get it through the auction?
We set expectations in a written proposal prior to, even moving toward an auction agreement. So
Okay.
we kind of lay a foundation of, that's my role is to set expectations with the seller. And if it's something that they're comfortable with, every seller has a different reason for why they may want to do the auction and accelerate their timeline and have control of when the property sells. And I present all of that in a very transparent fashion to the seller, and they can decide whether or not they want to press forward. You know, sometimes at that point, when I deliver a proposal to the seller and the agent, they'll look it over and maybe they're not quite ready and they put it on the back burner and they come back to me, you know, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years later. And, you know, sometimes life changes and they call me a week later. So I have a platform and I can present what I can do and I can set expectations. And then from that point, it's really up to the seller if it's aligned for them.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Okay, this is the conspiracy theorist in me, so just bear with me.
Mhm.
You guys, I mean, I'm sure you guys weed out shills. People are in there lowering, trying to get that a bid in to set the reserve low. Does that ever happen?
I
You see what I'm
mean,
saying? Like,
uh,
you're
uh,
saying that the when you open this up, the
Yep.
bids that come in, the highest bid that comes in sets your reserve. Is that what I understand?
correct. So we'll be collecting multiple starting bids and we present that to the seller. The
Gotcha.
highest starting bid creates the reserve, the market
right, perfect.
reserve. Yep.
That's what I misunderstood that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's in a range.
Can I ask you a question, Jennifer? This is Elizabeth Jolin. So the reserve that's set really that is once the seller sets agrees to that reserve, they can't change their mind. They're agreeing to the reserve at whatever rate that top bidding, and once the auction is over, if they don't have any higher bids, they have to contractually accept that highest reserve bid. Is that right?
Correct.
So thank you for clarifying that. So I'm just trying to understand, I think Krystal used the term, like this is not a fire sale, but when I look at the websites that, I get your emails, and it does look like the properties are selling at a significantly lower rate than they're being listed for. Or those opening bids are. So if you've got a $10 million property, it looks like, like almost 50% off, like a, flash sale.
Yeah.
So how do you talk to a seller and help them realize that even though, my professional skills, decided that we should set the original price at this amount, we're going to auction it at about half off.
So at the auction house, we don't set list prices. So we're just working with, what is already in play. Once we're working with a seller and an agent, and, I'm going to look at the market, and, I think sometimes the auction house perspective is really transparent and streamlined, because I'm seeing everything that everyone outside of the market that doesn't necessarily have MLS, I'm just seeing what are the sales, what are the top sales in that zip code. And I'm going to make a realistic approach of where I think bidders are going to start the auction. Is that kind of answering your question? I mean, as far as it selling for a reduction, we work in the luxury to ultra luxury sphere. And I think sometimes there aren't great comparables. If there's a $10 million property in said zip code and nothing's sold over 5 million, that's a gap. How do you really compare or comp a property that's far above what else is selling around it? So sometimes properties do become worth what someone's willing to pay for them when they're above the rest of the grade. Is that making sense?
That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Does anyone else have any questions for either Krystal or Jennifer?
How many of these deals do you guys do a year? Like, how many properties do you bring to auction?
Yeah, it's a good question. I can tell you, Jeff, that we own 85% of the market of by far and above the top luxury real estate auction house. This year, we're looking to do 250 transactions.
And if I'm an agent speaking to a seller about this, And, I've got to be honest with him. What's the potential upside for the seller in this? How do I sell the, I mean, what are like a couple things that this will help them achieve? Is it time? Is it, certainty? Is it, and then what would a couple of the downsides be,
Well, I'll tell you what, you get 75% because if we say 3 top, it would be reach, first and foremost, direct access to our database, which is again proprietary, has been built up over time, buyer after buyer. The second would be certainty, right? The seller sets the date of sale, they control that, and they're able to control then when the property ultimately trades. And then you're right, time, 60 days. So it may be that a seller is willing to wait 5, 10, years for what in their mind is where they want the property listed at. The reality is, and going a little bit to Elizabeth's question earlier, the reality is at the end of the day, right, the property is trading in a set given time for what the market sees value at, what somebody is willing to pay. And, we see sellers often who are looking for that. Time is the most important. They want to liquidate the asset, put it into a different thing. Jennifer mentioned life, changes. There are different situational things as well where time can be more important to a seller than, maybe waiting it out and seeing if something happens.
I have a question, Krystal. What is your success rate? And what percentage do you actually close and sell?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ruth. We close 97%. When the sellers elect to move forward with the auction, 97% is our closing rate.
Thank you.
Yep. And then if a seller decides, you didn't ask, but if a seller decides not to move forward with the auction, right? They have the starting bid in that 5 million scenario, for example. If let's say 4.5 is the highest, they just say, you know what, we really need 5, even for the starting, right? Then the seller elects not to accept any of those offers and the property just stays listed traditionally, the same as the listing agreement would be, that remains intact. We don't charge
there's no
fee to cancel.
default fee or anything.
No, there's not.
No.
There's not. Other auction houses might charge that. We haven't charged that for the last 5 or plus years. So that's why it's so important why we've, vet the property and the seller really well, because we're also fronting that. That's just,
Is there a buyer's premium?
there is. That's how we get paid. It's 12%.
12%.
Mhm.
On top of the high bid.
And do you do commercial properties or is it just high value residential?
Primarily residential. If you're talking about something that is, a multi-unit or multi-purpose, we do specialize in that as well.
Like, tell me more about that multi-purpose?
Yeah, we had a unit in Arizona that sold a couple weeks ago, one in Florida, New York a few weeks before that, where it was a gallery, a business could operate, or also a residency. So if there's multi-unit in that way.
Yeah, we also sold the Tiffany building in Palm Beach. So we have a few multi-use.
Your camera is on.
Do what?
Lauren, did you have a question?
Oh.
I'm so sorry. Nope.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have any question for Krystal or for Jennifer? No? Okay.
If you want to sign up, raise your hand, guys.
I mean, are we supposed to have a property ready to sign up, or we just get familiar and lined up in the system?
That's a joke.
It's a joke.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you have somebody, Josh?
I don't know. I got all kinds of things I don't know. I like this idea.
I like. Right?
I understand. I get that.
Yeah.
I like the process of this. I particularly like that you guys front the marketing. I love that part. So,
Mhm.
I have some luxury properties coming up, and you did talk at one point, Krystal, about the possibility of doing this right off the bat, not even waiting to see if the market, test the market that way. The guys that were selling mine won't do that, but I'm going to try to talk them into it. But you do that as well.
We do. We find and we'll have a few announced pretty soon too, where they're going straight to auction, straight first, never before offered publicly, right?
Right.
I'll also, yeah, I lost my train of thought, sorry, but yes.
Yeah.
Can
Well,
I
we're
ask
talking about
one
going-
other question? It sounds like you don't take all properties. Like you would look at a property and possibly say, no, this is not a good fit for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
Talk
we
about
take,
that.
20.
yeah, we take
Okay.
1 out of every 20 properties that we review, as Krystal said before, and a lot of it is, really the alignment with the seller and what we present, and just making sure we have the same expectations.
Could
So
you
out of
explain
that,
further?
750, you viewed that many more to get just to that 750 mark?
Mm-hmm.
What about a $500,000 island, uninhabited island in the Keys? No? No. Okay.
Which one are you talking about too, Jeff?
Yeah.
Jeff, you saw that, right? The no answer.
Yep, I did. I'm just I'm asking for a friend.
I know.
But I will say, Josh, I remember now my point would be we do find agents in that case where maybe you have a client who wouldn't, go straight to auction, right? Where agents will say, you know what, we're going to do a two-pronged approach, right? We're going to list it traditionally. Here's, here's with list price. Then we are going to, at the 180-day mark, go towards the auction strategy, go out to the market, elicit what that market reserve price would be for you at that point. So, we have a lot of agents who at the time of the listing conversation do introduce auction as a two-pronged approach to their listing strategy. And then being able to tap into the concierge database at that point, really, push towards what the sell is going to be, set that date. So we have a lot of that too. And all of the materials that you could use for sellers, your great marketing team, their Coldwell Banker, we also have them branded Global Luxury, is all in your agent portal as well. If you want to take a look, I know there's a slide you can add in for listing presentation. There's a brochure of quite a few different pages that go through some of this too for your clients, some social assets, emails as well.
All right. So last question for me, I just on this note, you've done apparently it seems a really good job at fending off the idea of the distressed only auction that everybody talks about. But how do you reconcile what you just said, which is it would seem that when you go to somebody with auction after 180 days on the market, that might give the impression of some desperation. I assume you guys you're as good at fending that perception off as well.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Josh, because I can say for the first decade with the company, that was really the focus of marketing and education because, there are still, again, real estate, if the auction can be relatively new, right? 20 years. So I will say that I think it's part of the strategy, right? When you're at the listing presentation and you're saying, we're going to go traditionally for 180 days, and then we're going to deploy the auction strategy. We have this unique tool and resource available to us and tap into that database. I think it really is when you approach the strategy in that way, the two-pronged, that's really where you lean in. And I also think, you guys know this too, especially for some of these properties that are, Jeff, the $500,000 island, there's maybe nothing else like it. How do you even start to price that, right? And so when let's price it, right? The same way I would say that you maybe are thinking about price, let's try it and see. Now the market is speaking to us and saying this is actually where they're seeing value. So we're going to go to the second phased approach.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we've got some agents that should be here today that aren't.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
we're gonna tie them down and make them watch this.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think I think the thing is they're not sugarcoating anything. I mean, the deal is what the deal is, and if it's timing that's in it, then that's what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah. And also then being able to get that reach, right? If timing's what's about, then can all agree, we have 5 weeks to find you the buyer. Let's be sure we're tapping into every resource we have and making sure that that's as big of a pull as possible.
We had a question, it's in the chat, you may mention this, what proof of funds is required?
So it's
So
proof of
there's,
funds. Oh, sorry,
go
go,
ahead,
Jen.
Krystal. No, that's
No,
okay.
you go.
There's 3 things we ask for buyers to register for the auction. So they all have to fill out bidder terms and conditions. As Krystal said, there's a typically $100,000 wire due that's held with the title company. And everyone has to show a current proof of funds that they're liquid for the transaction, because the contract is typically a 30-day cash close with no contingencies. And our client services team will verify the bank letter.
Does that answer your question, Leila?
Do you guys write
You're
the
welcome.
contract or do we?
We actually ask the agent for a blank purchase and sale agreement. Our team marks it up, our legal team takes out the contingencies, any get out of the contract pieces, and we send it back to agent and seller team for approval. And then it's posted in the data room. All buyers get the opportunity to review all the data prior to participation, so everyone knows what they're bidding on. We're all bidding on the same thing. We've all seen the same diligence.
Good, good.
Yeah.
I have to say, I like the 2-prong approach on the listing
Mhm.
presentation. I like that a lot. So something to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm. Okay. Anyone else? No? Well, I want to thank you both, Krystal and Jennifer. This has been very informative. And you're getting applause from Josh, which is really unusual. So
Take it.
yeah, it's hard to get. It's hard to get. So thank you. So we have another, okay, that was a thank you from Kim Parmalee. So thank you so much. And if I get questions, Krystal, can I call you? Can I call Jennifer? Can I email you with questions that may come out of this?
Yeah, that'd be great. You can reach either one of us. Jennifer will know your answer right off the bat.
I do
Okay.
have a quick
All right.
question. This is Michelle. I know that you guys had mentioned the title company and closing. Now, do you guys use local, or how do you put that in the contract?
So we typically use Novair title. They handle most all of our auction transactions. So that's who will hold the deposits for the bidders and execute the closing with our closing team.
But so that means, and I think in there it said the seller was paying though, right?
Yes.
So do the buyers, I mean, conceivably, if the sellers wouldn't need to get their own attorney if they chose to?
It's really up to the seller. Some of my sellers do, some don't.
Okay.
It's really up to them.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, thank you, Krystal, again. Thank you, Jennifer. And you probably will hear from me. I'm sure
Thank you,
there are gonna be
guys.
more
Thank you.
questions. Thank you so much. We really
Thank you.
appreciate your time.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Jeff. Thank
having
everyone.
us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.